Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
July 21, 2020, the Conflict of Interest edition. And we start off with that story as Softbank pulls $700 million from Credit Suisse because Credit Suisse grew wary about money from the fund going to companies backed by the Japanese conglomerate. Credit Suisse had opened an internal review last month after bank executives became concerned about potential conflicts of interest in the funds, as well as 3 sister funds which make money by providing short-term cash to companies. In essence, Softbank was acting as both lender and borrower in a complex circle of transactions. Credit Suisse found the aspects of the arrangement were not fully disclosed to investors. If that sounds like a circle jerk, well, that's exactly what it is. And given the difficulties Softbank has found itself in, it would not be surprising that it was lending money to itself, even in a conflict of interest. Next up from the EconomicTimes, a story about a former Cognizant employee who's filed a lawsuit against board of directors and key executives of the company, a class action lawsuit for alleging the company failed to disclose bribery and corruption allegations and misled shareholders. The claim alleged is that the board and executives breached duties by issuing false, misleading statements, omitting material information in the company's public filings about bribe payments to get approval for the construction of a new campus in India. Of course, most compliance professionals recognize Cognizant having received a full declination, although they had allegations of C-suite involvement in the bribery allegations. Next up, domestic bribery takes center stage in an article by RadicalCompliance as Commonwealth Edison, a subsidiary of the energy giant Exelon and the largest utility in the state of Illinois, agreed late last week to pay $200 million to settle federal corruption charges that also involve one of the state's most powerful politicians. The case is a reminder, Matt Kelly writes, to compliance officers that FCPA-like misconduct can happen right here in the United States. ComEd had been accused of offering lucrative lobbying contracts and no-show jobs. Wow, how about that for non-union corruption? To associates of Illinois Speaker Mike Madigan, a longtime Chicago Paul and one of the most powerful Democrats in the state. In exchange, Madigan shepherded several pieces of litigation beneficial to Con Ed through the vicissitudes of the Illinois legislature. So we have domestic corruption and a huge fine by Commonwealth Edison. And finally, for those who have not really listened to me very much about what I think is the upcoming wave of mergers, we have the first one here in early Q2 2020. Chevron does a deal for the oil and gas fields of Noble Energy with a $5 million play. In the first big deal since oil prices crashed 4 months ago, Chevron agreed to buy Noble Energy for roughly $5 billion in what many experts consider the beginning of a sweeping consolidation of the U.S. oil industry. The coronavirus pandemic has caused a sharp decline in oil demand, putting intense pressure on companies with large debts. This includes Noble Energy with operations in Colorado, Texas, the Eastern Mediterranean, and West Africa. But it's also created an opportunity for oil giants to gobble up smaller fish and extend their acreage. Chevron already has a large presence in the Texas Permian Basin and easy access to pipelines, which the company should be able to put to good use. Expect more mergers. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Daily Compliance News, which is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio.